Welcome to the Burnsville Planning Commission for Monday, August 13th. I'd like to welcome, we've got a full commission here tonight, and welcome our audience and staff as well. We've got a busy agenda tonight, so I will go right away to item 1, which is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes, additions?
No changes from staff?
Any from commissioners?
No.
Not, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 2, approval of the minutes of the July 23rd Planning Commission meeting. Again, any changes from staff
No
or
changes from staff.
commissioners? Seeing none, would entertain a motion.
So
Go ahead.
I move.
Moved
Second.
and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I need to note that I'm recusing on that. It
Okay.
wasn't here. Item 3 is a public hearing for E&R Investments LLC for planned unit development to construct a new 4-story temperature-controlled self-storage building at 14450 Nicollet Court. Ms. Garros.
Thank you, Commissioners. As I walked over here, I realized that I did not bring in the materials. Sorry. There are pictures in your staff report, but honestly, one of them is really just too heavy to even carry. But if you have questions, we can break and bring those in for you. I apologize for that. The subject site is in what's commonly referred to as a Golden Triangle. That's the entire area south of County Road 42 and then between 35W and 35E. This site that we're looking at is the last property to be developed. The entire Golden Triangle area, as indicated in the history part of your staff report, has been a planned unit development for many, many years. And the subject site actually has been planned in one iteration or another for some type of office use for over 30 years. And what the applicant is requesting is to, for two things, needing planned unit development. They're asking for an increased height, to increase the height over 35 feet within the zoning district, and then also to change the use from the approved office use to a mini storage use. So those are the two reasons that we're here this evening. They are requesting that the last planned unit development issued in 2001 for the site actually be rescinded. We've reviewed that with the city attorney and city engineer, and we are recommending that that be done. That just gets help to clear title, basically, for the applicant. And this is the materials board. Basically, what the applicant is showing is they came to City Council for work session review back in May and had a concept plan review. The City Council identified that they liked the concept and they wanted to see something similar to another project that the applicant has done elsewhere here in the Twin Cities, that being in Eden Prairie. So what the applicant has done is they've gone back, revised their plans, and from a staff perspective, we believe that this is very comparable to what the City Council was looking for. And basically, the types of materials that they're using will fit well within the entire Golden Triangle campus area, and also the colors are similar. And with the original PUD, there was an idea that this would be kind of a campus type development, and it has developed over many years with different kinds of uses. But those, for the most part, the exterior materials and things are fairly consistent throughout the PUD. In terms of the project itself, there are a lot of PUD benefits that are associated with the project. They are actually going to be providing 50% green space, overall green space. The requirement is 30%, so that is a big benefit. They're building perimeter landscaping. The requirement is 50 lineal feet, 50% of the building. They're providing 94%. The green space in the parking lot is also proposed to be 14%, whereas the standard is 3%, so they're well exceeding in all of those areas. And then primarily for the site, the property has been vacant all these years, and really some of the issues related with development kind of go back to the site is, although it has great visibility from the south driving north on 35 and 35E, it's difficult actually to get to it. You do need to come down County Road 42. Nicollet Court is a public road only to this point. And then the rest of the access down to the site, is all private. And so the individual property owners are responsible for maintenance, et cetera, to that. So we indicated for the deviations, the proposal for the building is to be 46 feet, 10 inches tall. The standard is 35 feet. Really, the ordinance doesn't have a maximum. It just indicates that if you want to go taller than 35, then you need to do it by CUP or PUD. And staff is supportive of the deviations. And similar to the council review, staff is supportive of the use change as well. The subject site consists of about 1.7 acres of land. And I think I'm going to go through here a little bit. What the applicant has provided for us are some exterior perspectives as you're driving southbound along 35E and 35W. The earlier PUDs all called out that this is a primary site just because of its location. And it's kind of the southern entry, if you will, to the Twin Cities and to the city. So the applicant has provided the perspectives to show you, give you an idea of what the building looks like. What I'd like to call your attention to is for southbound 35E, there is quite a bit of existing tree cover. A lot of those trees are located within MnDOT's right-of-way. So the building, really right until you get up to it, is not going to be very visible from that direction. On the other side, the site sits well above the highway. So this side will have much more visibility. And what they've done in their application is they have shown primarily at the south and then also the north, kind of a tower type appearance with all of the windows. They're proposing to have canopies or metal shades for accents, and also windows on the top two elevations primarily, because these are what is actually what you can see from the highway. This will be a mini storage facility. There's no outdoor storage that's proposed. Everyone will drive in to the parking lot. These are the only two doors, and you drive into the facility, do all of your loading, unloading, and then exit the facility. This gives you a bird's eye view, if you will, of the northeast facade, and again, kind of getting back at the being able to see where there is visibility to the site. That's where they put the architectural features for distinction. They also, on one side of the building, this would actually be facing 35E, if you will. There will be a parking lot that's installed for 14 vehicles. The building, the site, the parking all meets the ordinance standards. They are looking at primarily then having access at this location from the north, and there will be some access that's provided, a sidewalk access and turnaround access for fire trucks to be able to serve the site. The site has been reviewed by our Public Works, Planning, Building Inspector, and Fire Inspector, and everyone is recommending approval of the project. There are no issues. This would be the first floor plan. Basically, for the first floor, you drive in at the southern end. I can get this here at the two doors and do this. There are stairs in two locations, and then restrooms and some utility areas on the first floor. Oops, they don't have that all in there. The second and third floors, which I don't have in here, sorry, Second, third, and fourth floors are all the same footprint, and that information was provided in your packet. And that's all storage units, if you will. The entire building is 104,000 square feet, and again, looking to be a four-story building. For the site plan, this is actually the grading plan. What's proposed is, again, they'll be coming through the northern property along the easement that is provided and in place, driving into the site from the north, the 14 parking stalls, and the access here. For the grading plan, they do show 2 stormwater ponds, one in this location and then one at the very south, which is a much larger facility. There is a 2 to 8 foot retaining wall that's proposed kind of on this westerly edge. And one of the conditions identified by the city engineer is they just want to make sure that no part of the retaining wall encroaches within the drainage and utility easement in that location. But otherwise, they do meet their stormwater requirements and again, do meet all of the standards for the zoning ordinance, et cetera. This would be the drainage plan that's shown, just to give you an idea of we have the small area kind of to the northeast that drains to this pond, and then a little bit area to the north. The majority of the site drains to the south, and that's why we've got the larger pond located in that area. They have proposed a nice landscape plan for the area. Before the applicant came in to talk about this site, the owner, who still, I believe, owns the property, actually had some tree removal done without permits. So there is a case file that was established, and they have paid their woodland preservation or woodland replacement, if you will. That really is not anything associated with the applicant. That was done by someone different. However, what the applicant is showing is really a nice amount of both large overstory trees and then smaller ornamental type trees, and also some evergreens. This will have year-round interest. The landscaping meets all the requirements of the landscape ordinance. And just for the tree removal, this gives you an idea on the left of where the trees were. Most of those trees were volunteer growth, but they're all required by the ordinance to be evaluated and part of a plan. And then the right-hand side shows what's actually out there now. It will be really good to have a development out here. This site has been used for dumping of anything from mattresses to garbage and whatnot for many years. So having a development down here, the lighting and people present will be, I think, a very good situation, both for the property owners within the Golden Triangle and for the city as well. We went over the PUD deviations and the PUD benefits. The recommendation from staff, we are recommending approval of the project subject to 8 conditions. These are in your staff report, so I'll not go over them individually. If you have questions, I would be glad to answer them. I just wanted to identify, though, for item 6, the applicant has already provided that utility easement. So that condition has already been met. If you want to, as a commission, just recommend removing that condition because it's already been met, you can do so. And with that, I can start the questions.
Commissioners,
I actually have
Yep.
a couple of questions
Yep,
regarding
sure.
the staff report, just for my own edification. Page 8, the PUD deviations, the first bullet point where it's stated that a mini storage unit is typically not used in a B3 zone. What zone would you typically find a mini storage unit then?
Mini storage is allowed, I believe, as a conditional use in our industrial zones, like our I-1 industrial park over by Lark Industrial. And then also in our B4 zoning district, that's a highway commercial district, primarily along Highway 13. Interestingly enough, we just changed the ordinance about a year or so ago to remove mini storage from the B3 zone. The council wanted to do that more for, I think, possibilities of having these occur over near the shopping center, and they just thought that there would be a higher and better use over there. So actually, they took that out, like I say, about a year or two ago, and that's why they need the deviation, if you will, to allow the use.
Okay. And then my last question, page 9, for the proposed impervious surface coverage, it's 50%, but what is the typical required hard cover for a lot like that?
Sure. For impervious surface, there are areas of the city, we have several lakes, and we have the Minnesota River. And if you're in an area generally within 1,000 feet of those public lakes, there's a shoreland area, it's called. And there are impervious surface standards where you can't exceed the hard surface. And the whole intent of that is to try to have green land areas so that stormwater can come down and kind of percolate through the soil and move on, and you're not sheeting off large areas of impervious surface. I believe we do also have a building coverage standard, I think in the B4 zone, not quite the same as impervious surface, but another thing there. But that's generally what impervious surface is intended to get from a planning and zoning standpoint. Mr. Hillgardner can talk about impacts when we're dealing with stormwater and how impervious surface comes into play there.
Yeah, I mean, essentially with this project, we're looking at infiltration. There's good soils for it out there, so they're not disturbing or not adding over an acre of impervious, which would require actual ponding. So this is more of a volume control issue. So they will be infiltrating most of the water on this site, which is actually a good thing for the public waters. It has to, all the water from this site will be going into the ground and essentially recharging the groundwater. So.
Any other questions?
No,
That help?
that's it.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
great.
Can I ask a follow-up on, so do I understand that after looking at the drainage plan and the demand letter from MnDOT, I mean, is that addresses the concerns raised in that letter?
Correct. This is a bit of a unique project in that most of the water outlets to ditches within the MnDOT drainage system. Again, this project is actually infiltrating the water. It'll have overflow capabilities if there ever was a very large event that would go into that, but they did accommodate what MnDOT wanted, correct?
Commissioners, additional questions?
Follow up here.
Commissioner Menke?
So there's no storm sewer coming out of the Golden Triangle that this feeds into at all, or this site?
This site. The other sites drain into the actual ditches of MnDOT. MnDOT actually accommodates the drainage within that.
From all the rest of the Golden Triangle?
Correct.
Okay, that's news.
Well, that's interesting.
Okay, if I may continue?
Absolutely.
Deb, this has then met the statutory requirements for PUD in terms of the changes for going to the mini storage?
Yes, the way that different cities have different ways that they deal with zoning. For Burnsville, as long as the use is generally allowed under the comprehensive plan land use category, then you can use that, use a different use. Some communities will be much more restrictive, and you actually need to have, the use needs to be listed in the zoning district in order for it to be part of a PUD.
Sure. Okay, on your background, before you get to PUD benefits, there's a number of bullet points again, and when I first read them, I understood them to be the original Golden Triangle PUD benefits, and but as I read through them, it doesn't sound like that's what those are.
What page is that?
On your page 8.
8.
Overall objectives for the entire Golden Triangle PUD include maximize development potential of the site, et cetera, comprehensive plan design, variety of land uses, development enhances aesthetic character along the interstate roadway corridor, so I mean.
That relates back to the, kind of the original PUD
These are
and the
original.
objectives.
These
Yeah,
are-
the
okay, 'cause
objectives
when I
over
was
time.
reading this, it almost felt like it was talking about this project and how it benefited the site.
It's It's very similar because, again, this is such a high visible, visible area.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just wanted to include, this was provided to the council when the sketch plan went through. We just wanted to provide kind of the overall, in all the years of PUDs.
Oh,
These were kind of
absolutely.
the objectives they look for in the Golden Triangle.
Yeah, and I was struck by the fourth one. This building would make a major architectural statement at the gateway into Burnsville, and that's pretty
Yes.
clear. I think that the biggest issue I had right off the bat was if you look back at the images from the road, from that it was provided, that image on the right doesn't look like that anymore. When the trees were removed,
Yeah.
basically, it's wide open now.
So the trees are through here, yes.
It might not be that chunk, it might actually be the next chunk of trees, but basically when they cleared the site, you look right into it now, so that
Yeah,
whole,
the closer you get, you're exactly right, you look
so that
right
whole
into it.
east facade is now highly visible and not
Yes.
screened. So that was, I thought that picture didn't really show that very well. Let's see, what else did I have? So the issue with the 2001 PUD being rescinded, that is simply to get rid of some of the language in there that would otherwise force them into constructing those pieces, is that?
Some of those elements have already been taken care of, because there was also a plat involved at the time. But it's primarily, not having, each of the PUDs, the applicant actually would have liked to have more rescinded, but because they're tied into so many different parcels and properties have been replatted and replatted over time, it's just too difficult to do that. We did work with the city attorney, and for everything in the 2001 CUP, or PUD, excuse me, we would be able to rescind that. Still, the overall objectives of the PUDs approved earlier
Sure.
still stay with the property.
And the feeling from staff is that they've done a good job of meeting those previous standards.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's it for now, I think.
Commissioner Workman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Deb, I have a few questions. My first question relates to the access road back. I think no matter what goes up here, there's gonna be an inherent problem with a flow of traffic because of how things are situated. But is there going to be a legal agreement with the Hampton Inn and the other properties for that access through their parking lot?
That actually is already in place via previous subdivisions.
Okay.
So yes, everything, there is existing access easements all the way through here that are all private easements. And similarly with the utilities, that as well. So they do have access at the site, and they've provided the document showing that they are recorded and they have the ability to access them.
So whether it was an, excuse me, an office or a storage facility, that agreement, it pre-exists with the development.
Yes, we do think that with the, when you're talking about an office building, you have a lot of folks that are coming and going. And really with this being a mini storage site, I don't think you're gonna have the same amount of traffic. You know, everybody coming in the morning to work and then leaving in the afternoon. There still will be traffic, of course, folks coming in for their storage units. But we think overall, this may be a better use just because that existing access road is private and just being able to maintain that over time.
Okay, makes sense. Second question relates to the site itself and the doors that you would drive into. Do we have any consideration to stacking in that space as if, if there's a busy Saturday or Sunday where if maybe it doesn't seem like a huge bay for the overall size of the building, so is there any consideration to that? And
Sure. In terms of, we can have the applicant address that as well. What's proposed is very similar to other mini storage facilities that we have in the city. Some of them that have outdoor access, have got more area for stacking because you drive to individual outdoor units, if you will. But like, for instance, at the public public storage facility on Burnsville Parkway in 42 there. This is very similar to that. So from a staff standpoint, we don't anticipate issues. They do meet the parking, so if there was, you can have up to 2 vehicles in there at a time, I believe, loading and unloading, and other people could sit, in the parking lot and wait for that to come. But I think the applicant can explain what their use is and how they've applied this in other communities as well.
And then the last question is just a softball. What is that small building that's on the site right now?
That is actually a MnDOT building, this one down here. This is it within the MnDOT right-of-way. Is that the one you were referring to?
Yes, yep.
Exactly, that's off the private property.
Okay. Then I have no other questions.
Commissioner Roberts?
Can you go back to the map overlooking the actual like satellite view? Just from a standpoint, and this is just a question, maybe you guys can answer this later, but just looking at the entryway to get in there, to build this thing, have we already talked with the neighbors and everybody? And because the construction of that is going to be horrendous, it's not a small place. And is everybody else on board that they're fine with all that stuff coming and going all the time? I don't know if that is even an issue, but just from construction standpoint, I can imagine what's going to be in there for equipment and everything going back and forth.
They do have the access per the easements that are of record to be able to use it for those purposes. Whether or not the applicants had any discussions with the hotel properties, that may be a question you'd like to refer to them.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Commissioner Timmerman?
I have a few questions just regarding the access road. When I went in there, the road is in need of pavement, as well as Nicollet Court, for that matter. And so to kind of piggyback a few of the previous comments, I'm a little concerned with the construction equipment and the weight of that coming and going. And I do recognize that the traffic will be less with a mini storage type of use than if it were an office, but some of the trailers and vehicles that will be going in there will be heavier as well. So I'm a little concerned about the road, and do you have any knowledge that the private part of the road is going to be repaved after the construction equipment comes through?
We do not have any information from the private property owners as to when that will be done. Perhaps the applicant does. As far as the city part of Nicollet Court, I don't know if that is on a current, 5-year improvement project or not. That would be something that our city engineer would work with and we could look at. But for the private section, all I can state is that it was built to accommodate a very large, they were looking initially at an 8 to 10 plus story office facility, which again would have quite a bit of equipment involved in that. So it's always been contemplated to be developed, and I think from a staff standpoint, we would agree it would be nice to have those improved. Generally, it's a little bit more difficult for the private property owners to make those improvements because they're expensive. Some cities don't allow private accesses like that. Burnsville does in many, many locations, and it's really up to the property owners then to identify when and what they're going to do. The maintenance, there are maintenance covenants, if you will, and agreements for that private drive.
A different question from a different angle is, you mentioned something about dumping in that area, and this property is still going to be pretty secluded from County Road 42. And I'm just wondering if there's been consideration from the applicant, and you talked about police and fire approval, but I'm wondering if there's been talk about the security that will be in place on that property, especially since there won't be 24-hour access. I feel like there could be some desire to go back into that back part of the property to get further away from 42 if there were people looking to do nefarious things.
Most definitely. From a staff perspective, usually, once a property is developed, and they will also have lighting that's out there on 24 hours, and they will have their office staff, and the building facility will be open, I believe from 8 or 9 in the morning up until 10 o'clock at night. So I think the propensity to drop things off is less. That by no means means that that they won't do it. That's a continuing problem in all locations in the city. Unfortunately, it is the property owner's responsibility to clean those up. We do have a code enforcement division that does go out and do inspections and deals with code compliance. But yeah, that's a common thing. I think more common when we have apartments adjacent to some of our commercial buildings.
Commissioners, additional questions for Ms. Garros? Questions for the applicant? I think we did, correct? If the applicant would come up, we will fire off some questions. If you could identify yourself for the
Sure.
record, we'd appreciate that.
Well, I guess I stand back a little bit. Good evening, Planning Commission members, chairs, staff. Greg Hayes with Ebert Construction. Our development side here is ENR Investments, the applicant, and I lead the development side for us. So I'm here to answer any questions. I heard a couple questions about stormwater, which engineer answered, some traffic, some road condition, the easement. So I'll try and tackle these one at a time. As the city engineer said, we've addressed all the engineering needs and actually improved better than some of the other plans and have the approval from MnDOT for the overflow drainage, and we infiltrate, which is the ideal, which staff has directed us to. From a traffic standpoint, self-storage is very low traffic. Similar sized office building traditionally would have in excess of 300 daily trips a day. Building of this nature is about 60 trips a day. We don't see the stacking problem at the overhead doors. People, if there's somebody in there, they come and they park in the parking lot and wait their turn and then kind of go in and out. These buildings are designed for people with their pickup truck, their van, or a small U-Haul to get inside type vehicle, load and unload so that you're in a climate-controlled environment. The buildings are very secure. All the units have more modern technology, lock security versus the traditional key generally. And they also have monitor cameras throughout, both inside and outside. So they're pretty well done that way. Construction-wise, yeah, it's a tight site, but we're building others and have built others around. The one in Eden Prairie was a similar sized site that we built on that the council liked, and that's what we do as a business, and they're a challenge. And we're also concerned about the maintenance of the access, so that's where we'll deal with our neighbors as we get through the permitting process and construction process. So I think I've addressed what I heard were questions. If there's others?
Yeah, commissioners.
Yeah, just
Commissioner Roberts.
the one access on 42, just from a standpoint of getting in and out and stuff, is going to be horrendous for you guys. But everything's all been thought over and,
We've dealt with worse.
yeah, okay, that's what I'm asking. Because
Yep.
I know you're going to be taking out a lot of dirt, bringing a lot of equipment in, a lot of brick, a lot of everything. And the corners are tight. There isn't a straight shot in there. You got to go around a circle. You got to do a lot of that stuff. I know you guys, it's not your first rodeo. But just to look at it, looks like a challenge. But traffic on 42, good luck.
Like I said, we deal with this every day,
Yeah.
and we're finishing up construction on one on a site that's about a third of an acre smaller than this. That's the same size building with a, I would say, quite a bit more challenging access, and we've not had any issues with the city or the public on that, so.
Is like my question from before, sorry, I'm going to piggyback on myself. My question that I had before in regards to the neighbors, the hotel, the Pancake House, all those guys, you guys, have you talked to them, or are you?
What we do once we get through the entitlement process is then we actually go out and meet the local managers of those facilities, then they communicate back to their corporate headquarters, which aren't in Minnesota, those businesses. And we're about being good neighbors and having open lines of communication and sharing concerns. So I think in general, what our experience is that neighbors like this because it's doesn't take their parking stalls or impact their parking, but it gives them a little more brand image, a little more notoriety, and we build a very high quality building. So it helps cement their position in the community.
Commissioner Benke?
You talked a little bit about materials there. This isn't a brick block building, correct? This is precast.
It's precast with embossed brick on it.
So you're
and
looking at 60-foot panels coming down that road.
there are different size panels that come down.
But our height of the building is 60 feet, and your panels you're not gonna break the panel up as you go upstairs.
I believe this building sits on a footing at grade, I think, doesn't it? And so
Right.
they're 45, 46. You got to remember, we build up the capping on the top to get to the 46 feet for the architectural
Okay, so
detail.
I'm sorry, the previous building was 61, and this one's only 46.
This will be-
Okay, it's
yes,
still
this is
46
less,
foot
yes.
panels, okay. The construction timeline on this, though, is this handled like the building on 42, where you're basically building each floor and pouring the concrete and waiting for it to cure, and the construction takes 9 months, 8 months? 10
About 8 months construction schedule on this type of building, yes.
And quite honestly, I think the other one that we did, Deb, over on 42 by Outback, actually went over a year, if I remember correctly, as they waited for concrete to cure and things like that, so the
That was a little bit longer.
timeline could definitely go long. That building over in Shakopee or Savage, I guess, I think it's Shakopee there, how leased up is it?
You mean the Eden Prairie one that we showed the council?
No, the one that your company built over on 42 in Shakopee.
We didn't build one on 40, oh, the one on 42 in
Yeah,
Prior
had your
Lake.
name there, yeah.
In Prior Lake,
Yeah.
that took about 8 months to build.
And it's-
Also, that's just been started leasing up. They generally take about a 2.5 to 3 year lease up time frame to get to what they call at full occupancy, which is somewhere north of 90%. And then I'll just talk a little bit about, I've talked with staff, is it's families, it's mothers, it's a safe, secure place. It's where you can go and put your kids' stuff and go there at 8 o'clock at night and not feel like, boy, where am I parked and somebody's gonna pull up behind me, you know. It's people like all of us that are using these to put our stuff, because we buy a lot of stuff. So we gotta have places to put our stuff in. People tend to find that it's more cost-effective to have a storage unit than buy a bigger lot and a bigger house too, also. And because it's temperature controlled, it's also better storage. You know, stuff doesn't decay. It also allows for some of that little cottage industry, people with businesses, whether it's a craft person or something, they have a secure place they can rent a little 5x5 or 5x10 or 10x10 and store their stuff.
Okay. I think the next thing too is I looked at the building from Eden Prairie in the image, and I think the only two things I noticed from that building, two things I noticed from that building was, one, you seem to use color more deliberately in the other building. This one seems to be all one color with a little bit of accent. What I'm curious about is if you're able to, since you're still doing the precast, currently right now, Deb, actually go back one, if you could, or back to.
the other way?
That way, yeah. The entire east elevation is one color, where on the pictures from Eden Prairie, they had actually mixed in the darker color with the lighter one. This situation, that center area where the windows could get that and then mimic that Eden Prairie building more.
That's more of a uniform color. I don't know if, Todd, you want to talk about the color on the building here a little bit?
Deb,
Material.
can you go to the photo? Because you can see it right in the picture from Eden Prairie.
Let's see if I got that here.
It was
The
down
Eden
toward
Prairie
the end.
building.
Nope, I don't have
You
it
didn't
there,
have,
but I
you
do
don't
have
have
it
it,
right
oh,
here.
you don't have it in here?
I have it in the report. I had some assistants doing the PowerPoint here, so I apologize. But I do have,
I guess the other issue that I wanted to bring up in that same vein architecturally was that you know, this is not the kind of building that was originally planned there, which I've got other things I want to say about that later, but, and I guess I'm curious now that the building is more visible than the images show, is there a benefit, with the glass that you use, is it mirrored glass or is it clear glass?
It's a clear glass, a see-through glass.
So basically, when the lights are on inside, you're seeing you're seeing the building for what it really is, which is a storage facility.
Depends on your interpretation of that. I think most people, if I use this lockup in Eden Prairie image, that is a self-storage. Most people we show that image to, they don't even think of it as a self-storage. The difference is what kind of gives that one away is it has all the ACT-grade overhead drive-in doors, and we eliminated that feature to make it look more like a professional building. It really gets two hues of color. This Eden Prairie has to do with the light on it, but it's, if I brought you at a certain time of day, it looks almost all even toned.
That appears to be two different colors.
And,
on that
It's,
image.
it's.
There will be
a-
two different colors. I don't know that it shows up so well on these, but
No, yeah, right.
yeah, there's
And
a darker and
I
a
agree,
more
Deb.
of a red.
They had the tower as a darker color. It just felt like that you could break up that long run. And the other aspect is what I'm talking about right here, is you look in the tower windows there and you see the mini storage doors right behind it. And that was why my question regarded the issue of reflective glass versus clear glass. Now, at night, you probably still see what's behind it, but I would think that this could have a slightly more business-friendly, business look to it if some of the precast was replaced with glass and spandrel panels, for example. Right now, you have the top floor, it sounds like, and if that was extended down, given that you can see more of that building than what the images from the freeway show, you know, you might come across as a little more of a business type use instead of as a mini storage. I think also, let's see, what else did I have here? And again, I'm referring back to the original objectives for the Golden Triangle and what the goals were there. I don't think there's any issue with the height. I mean, it is what it is out in that corner, and clearly we've allowed for taller buildings in that site, so. And then, I think, Deb, the mini storage, the public storage that you're talking about, I think that's actually a drive-through. I think the one that you might be thinking of is the one up on 42 again by Outback, where I think that one might be a drive-through also, but then you don't tend to have that issue with stacking that Commissioner Workman was talking about.
It is a drive-through, North Star.
Yeah, North Star is, okay. Okay.
Additional questions for the applicant? Commissioner Timmerman?
I'd like to ask the same question I had asked Ms. Garrelson. That is, what's the plan for the private road after the construction is completed?
Well, the plan for the road is that the dedicated easement is maintained by all the property owners. We have just as much concern about having a quality road that's not full of potholes, just like the Hampton Inn has, and just like the restaurant has, the Pancake House. Everybody has the same goals. And it's part of working together. Without somebody there, I think it's probably maybe been a little less. You have more participants sharing and working together, it becomes easier.
So in the vein of being a good neighbor, that'll be part of the conversations that you have with those business owners?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
You know, to do our job right, we talk to them and become good neighbors, and we have a good track record of that. So we're not about to alienate neighbors, especially during the construction process, because as I said, we bring a quality building, it brings a quality image to them and helps their business too. So that's usually the feedback we get and seems to be consistent.
Commissioner
Yeah,
Pankey?
one more then. From the tone of what you just said, you don't build and sell then, you build and you lease. You own the building going forward?
We may sell it.
Okay.
They're all operated under a high-quality third-party management sometimes. They're all technology-based. You won't see probably print advertising. It's all, you know, search internet engine-based.
Additional questions? Seeing none, thank you, sir. We are
Thank you.
going to open the public hearing at 7:14 PM. If there's anyone who'd like to speak to this, please come forward and provide your name and address for the record.
Are you asking for this particular or something else?
About this item. We'll open, okay. All right, seeing none, we will close it at 7:15. Commissioners, what's your pleasure? Open for a motion, discussion?
I just wanted to lay some things out here. I guess
Yep, Commissioner
what I did when I first saw this was, I laid out the pros and the cons. And, basically to sort of go through them, and I think probably appropriately, I'm gonna look at the cons first. I think that one of the cons is, I think it's the debate of the change of use and see how we feel about that. The second thing that I have real trouble with is that this is within the Burnsville Center area review that's currently in process. And, essentially, we're working on a piece of property that could get a different direction from that meeting that we're already involved in. Another con is the character of the area detrimental by a mini storage. Another one was low traffic in what is arguably a retail area. Another con was the quantity of mini storage in Burnsville. Are we anywhere near saturation? I realize that's a business decision, but yet we're typically left with the empty buildings when retail leaves the area. And then loss of a high visibility, high value site. Now, to balance that, I definitely have some pros here too, because arguably that is a good looking building compared to what a mini storage could be. And again, on this side, the low traffic is gotta be a plus for this site. I mean, for what, as the gentleman talked about, a office building generating 300 trips a day, and quite honestly, I think his comment about 60 trips a day for mini storage is high. I think that at the end of the cul-de-sac that we're left with here, and I think if everybody looked at their background, that street was originally supposed to go a lot farther back. So when they shortened it, they made some accommodations for it. And I do agree with Mr. Hayes there that once the final piece of this is filled, they do have another participant in the maintenance of their association. And access, again, is, there aren't too many things that would fit this access like this. So anyway, that was my pros and cons. I do think that the last, well, I gotta jump back. I did find I had one down at the bottom here. The last one is, that I have as a con, is the gateway image. And that's why I think that, personally, why I think that we need to really have them do a great job on the outside of the building. And in my mind, they're 90 or more than 90% there, quite honestly. That's my 2 cents.
Other comments? Commissioner
Yeah, I
Roberts?
thought your landscape plan looked good. I mean, it needs to be cleaned up, and fast forward a year and a half from now, 2 years, you're putting in big enough trees where they're not too small to start off with, especially the maples and stuff. So we're gonna have some color and some change in seasons. You've got enough evergreens, which represents a lot of what we're gonna be doing with our new mall that's gonna be coming up. Again, I like the building as well. Compared to what's there now, that wouldn't look bad. I didn't mind it at all. I thought it was good.
Anyone else? Comments or a motion? Or additional questions? Commissioner Workman.
All right.
He's scrolling rampantly.
This was a big background. I would like to recommend that the planning commission recommend to the city council approval of the PUD amendment to construct a new 4-story mini storage building at 14450 Nicollet Court, subject to the following conditions, with condition 6 being stricken as it has already been satisfied.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any additional comments? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
No. And I'll leave mine as being the issue of the Burnsville Center review area currently being in process. And that's pretty much the only reason.
Motion carries 4-1. Thank you very much. That goes before the city council on,
On August 21st, and that meeting will start at 5:30 in this council chambers.
thank you very much. That takes us to item 4, a public hearing for the city of Burnsville for a conditional use permit amendment to work within the floodplain and shoreland of the Minnesota River and Black Dog Lake to repair storm sewer facilities on property located north of Black Dog Park on land owned by Northern States Power Company at 1400 Black Dog Road. Ms. Garros, that's a
Thank you.
long title.
Yes, it's a long title. For those of you that are new, I tend to be the planner for the XL Black Dog plant area and utility crossings and all those fun things. So just a little bit of background. Excel owns many thousands of acres, basically along the Minnesota River, just to the south. And then there's also Black Dog Lake and another part here. The actual campus of the power plant is in this location. And the majority of the site they lease to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and is park preserve, if you will. And they work very well with the city and with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Board of Soil Resources, et cetera. So there are a lot of different projects that take place down here, and this is another one. The subject site is located in a shoreland district for Black Dog Lake, meaning part of the site where the work is going to happen is within 1,000 feet of Black Dog Lake. Also, the entire area where the river flows and then over Black Dog Lake is actually part of floodway, if you will, for the Minnesota River. Water floods in that area. And the reason that we are here this evening and need a conditional use permit is primarily any work that you do, even moving dirt within the floodway, requires a conditional use permit. So that's really why we're here with this particular project this evening. The site that they will be affecting for this project, there are actually 2 small sites in this area, just to the kind of northwest of Black Dog Park. If you come through to Black Dog Park in this location, there is a gate and an access which brings you to a newer bridge that was constructed to the south side of the Black Dog Power Plant. In this area here, basically what is happening is we've got the railroad bed and there are some city utilities. There's also private utilities, natural gas pipelines, overhead power lines, all sorts of things that kind of serve the region as well. But in these 2 areas, the existing pipelines and culverts need some work to bring them back and to resolve erosion that's occurring in the area. There is a larger project taking place that also includes Cliff Fen Park, which is much further to the south, and that's a very large project. All of these are designed to improve water quality, both within the areas, and then the one in Cliff Fen Park really for the fen that is located out there. That site in Cliff Fen Park is not in a floodplain or in the shoreline district, so they do not need the CUP. But it's all part of, these 3 elements are actually part of the same overall project. What this shows is the existing topography, and there are actually 2 sites. In this site here, the more southerly or westerly site, if you will, this is where the culverts are, where they have basically silt is flowing out into the area here and then partially getting into this little stream area. So they do want to clean out both part of the stream and also those culverts, basically to make sure that, water, again, we're dealing with clear water and not adding sediment to that area. In this area of the site, This is where there's an existing 60-inch storm sewer pipe, one of those big cement pipes. And what's happened is that water flowing through that over the years has eroded below that pipe. And as you get more and more water, there's more and more erosion. So what they're proposing to do here is really to put in a metal, they call it a sheet pile wall underneath, and then to establish riprap so that there won't be any continued erosion. So they're really repair projects. The site does have wetlands. There was a wetland delineation report that was done. And the wetland delineation has been reviewed by the Board of Soil and Water Resources, and there are no permanent impacts, and they have given their go-ahead to the project. And what this shows, this is really the grading plan for the two sites. And overall, let's see here. Overall, let's see, make sure I get these right here. Where they're making corrections to the stormwater outfall pipe in this location, they are looking at basically adding approximately 210 cubic yards of fill, and then plus 50 cubic yards of riprap to deal with the erosion control. The overall addition is kind of offset by the silt that's going to be removed from here. So there is no net increase in the floodway. And we do have the documents from the applicant for that. That is really what we look at for these conditional use permits. The other item is part of the work includes some work where the actual railroad right-of-way is in access, and you can see the grading plan in some of these locations. In the shoreland ordinance, if you have slopes that are 30% or greater, either if you're cutting into those or you're filling and leaving slopes at 30% or greater, to do that, you need a conditional use permit. Now, with the railroad is responsible for, for their own railroad, and the city needs to work and get permitting through the railroad. And in some of these areas, the slopes do exceed a little bit beyond the 30%. So we just published the CUP for impacts, again, temporary impacts to those for the Shoreline District. This gives you an idea of the overall wetlands. When you look down there, wetlands, according to the Wetland Conservation Act, pretty much anything that has water, I believe, over 7 to 14 days. So we do have wetlands, but again, the impacts are going to be temporary, and the Board of Soil and Water Resources has indicated that the project can proceed as proposed. This slide shows the actual delineations of the wetland, and here you can see this channel. I'm not positive. I believe that this may be one of the channels that is also designated as a trout pond, or trout stream, if you will. I believe we have 4 in the city, and we are working with the Lower Minnesota River Watershed District and others with our surface water management plan to see what can be done to restore those. In this case, we're dealing just with these outflows and culverts. So again, trying to improve what's existing out there at this point in time. This is just a floodway exhibit showing, again, that they are doing work within the floodway and therefore the need for the CUP. And just an idea of access. The final access, as I understand, has not been identified yet. The city engineer noted that they will be identifying this as part of the project. There may be some other impacts depending on exactly where the access goes. So they have included a condition related to access. We don't anticipate that there will be any additional filling impacts, if you will, to the floodplain. So it's just a matter of, they haven't hammered out yet that specific access, but that will be done as part of the project. With that, the recommendation is we're recommending approval of the conditional use permit. subject to the 7 conditions that are identified. Several of these are standard conditions that we apply to any floodplain conditional use permit. Number 1, that any previously approved conditional use permits and variances remain in full force and effect. There's a whole host of them over the decades, so those just remain in place. 2, that all the permits by the affected agencies on the railroad need to be obtained before the project can proceed. 3 is a general floodplain requirement, basically identifying the floodproofing measures and providing the city with certification of that within 60 days of completion of the project. We always require as constructed plans to be provided. Again, that's the city's responsibility as part of the FEMA Federal Emergency Management Agency. What we do is we administer their ordinance and their regulations for the federal government so that people can obtain flood insurance for those folks that do have a need for FEMA flood insurance. So those plans would be another standard condition. All the construction materials need to be removed once the project is done. They'll need to do a tree survey, identifying the trees to be removed and get a tree removal permit. Again, for the entire Excel property, it's a very huge property, thousands and thousands of trees out there. It's unlikely that they're ever going to get to that percentage where they need to start replacing trees, but we do keep track of all tree removals and woodland removals for all of these projects. So they will need a tree survey and also a tree removal permit. And then the final access routes per the city engineer will need to be identified, and any restoration needed they will have to do. With that, I can stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Garros. Any questions from the commission? I'm seeing none. So we will open the public hearing. Sir, if you'd like to comment, feel free to come forward and identify yourself and your address. Welcome.
My name is Gil Diedrich. I live in Walden section of Burnsville. We've been here 48 years. I'm vice president of the Minnesota Farmers Union for Dakota County. And we've been doing some work for the Commissioner of Agriculture with regard to the Black Dog area and its pollution. And as you know, the Minnesota River is polluted and the pollution is from mercury, from the former Black Dog plant. And it's taken us probably almost a year to find out from the Minnesota Pollution Control if they had ever taken a soil sample as to what the level of mercury is in the Black Dog, South Black Dog section. And no one could tell us. But fortunately, we were able to find out from the Minnesota Health Services that there was a soil sample taken in 2007. And at that time, Dr. Herbenson, who was the head toxicologist for the State Health Service, reported that 1.50 milligrams per kilogram of soil would be very toxic to humans. And the toxicity, of course, causes kidney problems in adults, and in children, it's brain deformities. The normal level of the soil sample was 3.1 milligrams of mercury per kilogram. And again, we just said that the level of toxicity is 1.50. So the outfalls that we're putting in, repairing, I hope you get done and done quick, because it's there's something going on at the Minnesota Pollution Control which we can't put our hands on, but right now Burnsville is unfortunately is not is actually in jeopardy with regard to the Clean Water Act, because we have an M4 permit from those outfalls that are in there, but we do not have a maximum daily load permit, which is necessary if you're going to put additional pollutants in an impaired body of water, which the Minnesota River is. So I just thought you should know that, and the Commissioner of Agriculture belongs to a group of commissioners of all the states that border on the Mississippi River, and they're all trying very desperately to get it cleaned up. And for that reason, our problem right now is the Minnesota River as it goes into the Mississippi. It is terribly impaired, and it's impaired for mercury in fish tissue, mercury in the water column, PCBs, and some other things. But that's what I wanted to hear, and we're in hopes that you can get those. Unfortunately, outfalls are considered under the law as point sources of pollution. Mm-hmm. The point sources of pollution that we will be getting from the repair to the repair of those outfalls in Black Dog from Burnsville, which have been there for many years, is probably a little lead and more likely nitrates and some phosphorus. But the real problem is with the mercury. And so the other problem I wanted to visit with you for a minute about was that when the recent construction in the area for, in that Black Dog area for XL Energy, there was another thing that they were supposed to do, and that was to run a water meter to find out how many storms we got during the construction time that were over a half inch of rain. And we never did hear any report on that. And we would, I think, possibly, if you're going to approve getting that work done on those outfalls, that you would also have some way of keeping an idea as to how much rain we had. If you get in more than half an inch, you're carrying a tremendous amount of mercury over and above the level that's already in it. Again, Burnsville has not been given, can't get a maximum daily load unless the Minnesota Pollution Control makes the test and can tell us. And so even though we're out of whack with that federal law, it's not our fault, but I think you should know that. And we're hoping that can be taken care of soon. But I have to tell you, I don't know what's going on over there, but it's sure is strange. And I've been around on this earth 85 years, and I got to tell you, I hope that we don't get beat up because of it. And I wanted the Planning Commission to know that. We're very proud to have lived in Burnsville, and we have a 2-acre pond in Walden, and the city was right on it when we said it hadn't been cleaned in 40 years. It's fed by 2 outfalls. They came and they dredged it for us. They put new rock in the outfalls, and our wildlife is back in that too. We have 24.4 acres of common ground, all wooded, our wildlife was back. We put up 5 wood duck boxes, and 4 of them within the first year was filled with nests. So we're very proud of that, and very proud of what Burnsville did for us. So I'm trying to stay on this for the commissioner. It's a strange thing going on, but I think that's about all I have. But I just thought I wanted to come and let you know what's going on, and hopefully that you can get that done. One thing I might mention to you also is that when they did the construction, and that was a 43-page. I have a copy of it. It was 43 pages of the permit, and listed everything in. But they were going to save time and not do that much digging and disturbing the land by putting a pipe under Dakota Lake, and their idea was to put it down 40 feet and go under and save a lot of digging and soil disruption and dragging that into the river. But they never looked at the soil map. Now, the city of Burnsville is very lucky, because the conservation department, USDA conservation, which the office is in Farmington, has every inch of Burnsville in those maps, and you can find out, from your home what are you sitting on. In our case in Walden, the soil is Chautauqua, great soil, very sandy loam. It goes down 81 inches before it hits a rock base. But if these guys had taken and the maps are free, they give it to you free, get a map and take a look at it, they would have known what they were going into, and they ripped up equipment and delayed getting the. It was, I'm not even sure if they got all of the digging done already, but that was awful, and we're hoping that you will get to somebody on that one, and make sure you get a soil map, and I'd go take one, get one for yourself, and see how you're doing with regard to where your house is.
Thank you, Mr. Dietrich. We appreciate your
Thank you very much. I
your
appreciate it.
long-time commitment to these issues. So we appreciate your coming tonight. And I'm seeing no one else. We're going to close the public hearing. So
Thank you very much.
You're the public tonight. Thank you.
Oh, not too bad for an old guy. Thank you.
Commissioner Benke.
Yeah, I guess some of the points that Mr. Dietrich brought up, and by the way, Mr. Dietrich, I actually have a paper copy of that cell report from the early 80s, so I do know exactly what you're talking about in terms of it being available for everybody. Just to be clear here, we're not adding any new outfalls to this. We're basically cleaning up the existing structures. Is that the deal?
Commissioners, that's exactly what it is. I mean, this is no more than a maintenance project. I mean, it's existing outfalls that are there, just fixing them up, actually making them better. The project won't take very long. They do have an erosion control plan in place, so they will have to have measures that meet the MPDS requirements with silt fence, flotation curtains, things like that. So any silt or anything like that would be captured by that. If they were to remove any soils from the site, it's up to the contractor to permit that if it does have any contamination or anything like that. So
That was the last few things I was going to ask.
okay.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Any other questions? I would stand for a motion if someone is interested in
Sure.
making one. Commissioner Benke.
I would recommend that the Planning Commission recommend to City Council approval of the conditional use permit allowing grading, filling, and utility work within the floodplain of the Minnesota River and steep slopes in the shoreland of Black Dog Lake at 1400 Black Dog Road, subject to the following 7 conditions.
You have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And this will go to the city council
Also on August 21st.
on August 21st at 5:30. I think that brings us to the end of our agenda. Any updates from members of the commission or from staff? I've got one update. Ms. Garros and I were scheming earlier before the meeting started. One of one of the things I've struggled with since I've been on the planning commission is what I would call a feedback loop, trying to make sure I understand when we recommend something to the city council, that I know what happens.
Right.
I have to admit, I don't have a lot of time to watch the 6 hours of city council meetings and work sessions every evening. So we're trying to figure out a way if they're, if they substantively change what we recommend, that we can, that we'll, I don't know that we'll discuss it, but trying to figure out a way that we can communicate that just so we're all aware. I think it's a good informative thing as we're making future decisions, because it just struck me a couple projects that I read about in the paper, and I tried to watch the council meetings and I didn't see the whole thing. So anyway, just so we know, and it informs our work. So just to give you all a heads up on that. I don't know what form it's gonna take yet, but we're scheming, so. There's nothing else.
The only thing we have from staff is your next draft agenda for your next meeting.
Draft agenda, the next meeting on August 27th. I would stand for a motion to adjourn, if that's the will of the commission, unless you would like to.
Motion to adjourn?
It's been moved, second, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That's all for tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.